All right, yeah, we have degenerates who love spring football, and then let's go next level degenerates for people like me and XFL Jim who might actually place a bet or two on spring football. Jim, appreciate you joining me on here.
I'll be 100% honest. I appreciate being here. I will be placing a bet on every single XFL, USFL, CFL game this year.
That's hardcore. What's the payoff on these? Now, what are we talking?
Well, so the USFL last year I did really well. I remember the only one I remember the percentages because I didn't start being responsible and fully tracking my bets until like the end of this year, so September and whatnot.
Right.
But the XFL in 2020, I was hitting at like 80%.
No kidding.
That I do remember because I was just being blown away by how because like the first 3 weeks I hit a parlay on every because I just would parlay like either a total or a spread or a money line for every game. I'd be like, boom. I was making it was great.
Well, so you're the guy that we have to talk to here. You wrote a great article on sportsgamblingpodcast.com. And by the way, you can find Jim on YouTube, not just on this channel, obviously, but if you go to @XFL Jim on YouTube and Twitter, but on YouTube, viewer discretion advised. But it's great stuff. It is so awesome.
There's some videos on there I would not consider like family videos.
You click the not made for kids box on that.
Definitely.
Right.
Just watch the Christmas video and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Correct. @XFL Jim. I highly recommend it. All right. 4 tips that we're going to talk about that you talked about in this article that you can find on sportsgamblingpodcast.com. Obviously, Jim, you talked about the success rate you had here. Tip number 1 was the early season unders are the move. And I think probably because as we have watched spring football, they have such a shorter training camp. It takes a while for these teams. I mean, basically, when you're talking about the inaugural season, a lot of times, these are just 8 expansion teams that are playing together. So sometimes you're not going to have these shootouts. Is that kind of how you see it there?
That's exactly how I see it. I'm wondering how that's going to play out for the USFL this year with another round. They're extending their training camp a little bit, but I still expect that they'll have those issues. I think it's just a bunch of players kind of not getting that cohesion fully undeveloped. And then it's that combined with the books not knowing how to score it right away. And then eventually they catch on. They start lowering the totals. You'll notice that the totals sort of creep down a little bit lower and lower week to week. And then somewhere along the lines, they blossom. So I love, at least for the first half of the season, I love taking full game unders, and I love first half unders. First half unders are great.
Good tip there. Good tip. That 1 and 1A there. Number 2 that you talked about was if you like those underdogs, take the money line on those.
The USFL was a little weird with this, but I think that has to play with a lot of underdogs being that they don't have a home field advantage like they do in other leagues. The AAF and XFL, a lot of the times, the only exception to me was like any team playing the Houston Roughnecks, but a lot of the times the underdog, they would cover, but the underdog a lot of the time wins outright. If you like them.
And you talked about too with, and this will be tip number 3 here about fading the public team. If you start to see a lot of money coming in on a team, you tend to fade that a little bit. And why is that?
Yeah, so people, you can just kind of get into it on the future market a little bit, see what team everyone's getting their rocks off to. So, like the Battlehawks, like XFL in 2020 is a perfect example. Everyone, the favorite going in, overwhelmingly was the Dallas Renegades. Everyone was super high on the Dallas Renegades. If you see value on certain teams, like I like the roster of the Battlehawks. I loved the coaching style of June Jones with this kind of league. Right. You can find these areas. The USFL, the only team that's the exception is like the Stallions. But even then, a lot of games, they were close. They did not cover.
Yeah. It just, when you put all these, again, as we've talked about, now the USFL will have a bit of an advantage, I think, in the second, or it might be a little tougher to bet. The advantage might be toward the house versus bettors because they've had a year to play together for the most part.
That's what I'm thinking too. The USFL will be the very interesting one to look at from a gambler's perspective just because they've had a year to develop. But if we remember, a lot of USFL players, a decent amount, like some are in the NFL, some are in the CFL, now some are in the XFL. They're still bringing in a lot of new blood. So I think the books developed a little bit, but they're also not all playing in Birmingham this year. They're probably going to be doing the hub situation. So then there's 3 new stadiums that people got to get used to.
That was going to be my next question to you. Would you change your betting strategy a little bit? Because I went down for the USFL back during the spring, summer there toward the end of the season. And when Birmingham played, there was a definite home field advantage. You got, I mean, even though it was only about maybe 17, 18,000 people, it was still a lot more when you would go to the other games and there were about 50 people.
Yeah, that's
the strategy. Right. So I think the strategy might change a little bit for you, because if Memphis, for instance, really catches on with the community, they could have a home field advantage, right?
Yeah, so like the Memphis team in the AAF had a decent sized crowd.
Yeah.
That's what's going to really be something to observe the first couple weeks, is to see if those hub cities get their home crowd advantage. The only one that I don't think, because I believe they're thinking of doing Canton as a hub, and I just don't see any home field advantage for any team that's playing in Canton. But that'll be something to monitor, just because what's going to happen if the New Orleans Breakers are playing in Memphis too. It's Tampa Bay playing in Memphis. It's going to be interesting to see how much of a home field advantage those hub cities have versus like if they were just in their actual hometowns.
Right. And yeah, I think for USFL, I know they have talked about maybe in 5 to 7 years. Now, that's a lot to ask out of a spring league to last 5 to 7 years, but they would try to, by that time, maybe to draw the line of, okay, we're going to try to sell it to these owners in all these towns.
Yep.
So that's well down the future. We're talking about betting right now. That might be another future bet that we'd talk about. So to recap here, early season unders, you like if you want to bet the underdog, bet the money line. You like to fade the public team. And then your fourth tip that you had in the article that's on sportsgamblingpodcast.com, week 1 favorites are king. And is that because a lot of the betting might be people looking at, if you're setting the odds, you're looking at maybe the quarterback situation, or why do you like the week 1 favorites?
I think just because going in, we really don't know anything about the teams, especially these inaugural seasons. So they set the lines just super short. Like a lot of them are -3, -3.5. You don't see a lot of -5s even. And those favorites, they'll come out and they'll just, like, when a team is gelling, they're out the gates dominating. And like the bad teams starting off are bad. You saw it in the XFL in 2020. The Tampa Bay Vipers, the Seattle Dragons, they were bad.
Yep.
They started to pick it up later in the year, but they started off bad. And the Houston Roughnecks started off fantastic. The St. Louis Battlehawks, great. Defenders started off great. Like the teams that are going to be contenders and really good usually start out the gate really good.
And you mentioned too that you kind of see like week 5 or like kind of that midway point of the season. That's when you start to maybe see the cream rise to the top a little bit.
Yeah, I did. I was looking over a spreadsheet. So the XFL only went 5 weeks, which it's a shame that it only lasted 5 weeks. But week 5, AAF went 8 weeks. The USFL went a full 10. I looked it up, and week 5 of every single, specifically week 5, overs hit at like an almost 80 to 90% rate in week 5. I think between all 3 leagues on week 5, there was one under game. It was in the XFL, the Battlehawks versus the Defenders. That's the only week 5 game that has gone under in all 3 leagues. And then for the USFL and AAF, after week 5, overs are hitting at a little bit more consistent rate than they did before.
That seems like, yeah, of course we have to make it to the midway point with the spring leagues. We always I talked to Reed on here. It's like, Reed Johnson, we said it's like if you get to a championship game, you have hit the high bar of spring leagues.
Hey, the USFL, they're the sitting champs right now because they made it. They made it a full season and championship, baby. I love them for it. I was rooting in 2020. Yep. I was devastated. I almost got fired when they announced the cancellation because I threw a chair so far that it almost just broke the wall.
Right. I was with you there, man. It was like, that week of 2020 with when COVID was just, knocking everything out, there was the announcement that they would go ahead and play without fans in the stands. And then they finally just said, we just can't do this anymore. And that, I was with you on that. Hey, speaking of championships, let's talk about the XFL championship odds. I know as we approach kickoff, that's looking down the way a little bit, but a lot of people might want to put some money down on these odds right now as they are. And as we record this, St. Louis is kind of the money line favorite here at plus 350 to win the XFL championship. The outliers here, the long shot is DC Defenders at plus 650. What do you think about those favorites, the favorites and the underdog there?
So if I'm taking a favorite, I'm going to back my boy. I trust his offensive scheme. I'm going to take the Seattle Sea Dragons. I just can't. June Jones is a proven, he's not the coach, but he is the offensive coordinator, right. And his offense works in spring football. It's worked in the CFL. It worked great in the XFL. And I like the Seattle Sea Dragons. I like the weapons they have. I like the quarterback selection they have. The other long shot I'm taking, because I'm going to take one favorite, one long shot. Okay. Similar reasons. I like what the Houston Roughnecks have up there. I like their potential. I just previewed this team. If Cole McDonald plays up to his potential, he could very well be the best quarterback in this league. There is a shot.
Cole McDonald, as I talked on this channel before about him, it was like, I think the quote was, Cole McDonald, he's never met a pass he didn't think he could complete.
That is
which gets him in trouble sometimes, but he's fun to watch, no doubt. Played at Hawaii, I believe, right?
Yep, played at Hawaii. Yep. He was a gunslinger there. Mm-hmm. He's a gunslinger at heart. And I want to have so much fun rooting. I loved watching him at Hawaii. He was, those late night Hawaii games, he was just going crazy.
And I'm jealous of that head of hair that he has too. All right. Yeah. XFL Jim, now I've got to hit you here on some prop bets because you strike me as someone who might be interested in some prop bets. All right. Here's the one that I think you and I are going to agree because we're both kind of veterans of spring football, but I think we'll agree with this one. One of the prop bets is, will the XFL complete the full season on the money line? Yes, minus 900, no, plus 1,500. I'm going to say because of the financial backing with everybody that's involved with this and the network backing, I don't think it's going to be a problem to finish this season. What do you think?
Yeah, I think season one, hands down, they're not going to have an issue finishing. Maybe like depending, that season 2 is where the questions come up, like how do the crowds look? What is the viewer retention? Mm-hmm. But season 1, I think, is in the books.
All right. What event will have the most TV viewers? USFL Championship plus 155, XFL Championship minus 210. Now, this is interesting to me. What do you think?
So this is the championship game, not their inaugural game?
Right, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But this is the championship game. We have to assume first you get to 2 championship games. I think we will this year.
I think so too. I think it's the XFL probably, but there's value. Like if that were to be at like plus 200, I'd probably bet the USFL. Yep. Just because it's in a deader part of the year for sports. It's like it's kind of the only thing going on.
See, to me, I think you're right with that. With the XFL kicking off in February, you're going to probably lose some viewers maybe in March as the NCAA tournament ramps up.
You will.
But I think after that, they're going to be kind of the king. But then, as that wraps up, then the USFL starts. So I think I think we're on the same page here. The XFL championship, especially being the inaugural season, I think they'll get some viewers.
I think so too. I think it'll be the XFL. If that gets to like plus 200, I might dabble a little bit on the chance the USFL gets there. But I think the XFL will have more.
Yeah, I think
like they're playing the Superdome.
Right. I mean, you got to think that wherever that ends up, and then maybe the playoffs. If they do, maybe do the playoffs, in Orlando or wherever. I don't think any of that matters. But I will say I did read that they are doing some smart things with selling tickets in on one side of the stadium for some of these games. Not St. Louis, because I already have some tickets for St. Louis, and they're all around. But like for some places, they're selling tickets on the other side. It's going to look like a better product on television, which was a problem, I think, for the USFL. The optics of that were not great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Even though I love the league to death, but the optics for a non-Birmingham Stallions game did not look good.
No, I'm with you. I love the league. I watched almost every game, I think, and and like I said, got to see some in person. All right, we talked about you. We're going to touch on this the inaugural game. Like what event will have the most viewers? Regular season game 1. It's the same money line. It's the USFL regular season plus 155, XFL minus 210. I think the factor for the XFL playing into that is because this is, again, even though it's 3.0, it is the curiosity factor for a lot of fans out there, sports fans, not necessarily fans of the XFL or spring football, but it's something new that maybe they didn't even pay attention in 2020, but they're seeing all this hype on Monday Night Football on ESPN in general. I think they'll at least tune in for that first week.
I would agree with that too. I think, it's a minus 210, but at this kind of year, I think it's almost free money because the XFL does have one major thing for its inaugural game that the USFL doesn't, that it's year one. Let's see how this product looks. Let's see how the new rules look. Let's see how the players look. The USFL, we kind of have a feel. I think it'll be good, but I think the XFL will have a better opening week.
And we talk about curiosity factor. Let's go back to the AAF opening night, opening game. 2.9 million viewers watched that, and it was on network television, so that was big. XFL had 3.3 million for the opening game. USFL had 3 million. I go back, I remember all the hype because it was an NBC backed league back in 2001, XFL 1.0. When I looked at the ratings for this recently, I couldn't believe it. This will never happen again. And I never say never in a lot of things, but this will never happen again for a spring league. It had XFL 1.0, when it debuted on NBC in 2001, got a 9.5 rating. How about that'll never happen again, will it, Jim?
Unless NFL reffing implodes in 1 year, and just
which is possible.
Unless that happens, I don't see that's so many people.
It's unbelievable. I don't know what it'll ever happen again. But you have to go back to and kind of take the context of history there, where it was 2001. There hadn't really been a real spring league since the USFL in the 80s, and it was Vince McMahon at the height of WWE. So, but I feel like that you're going to put some of these parlays and that you'll use some of these money line ratings parlays in as the season goes along.
Oh, I'll be taking some. I love it with college football, but I'm gonna love it with the XFL. That when I see a dog I like, I'm gonna be incorporating those juicy monies in my parlays, because then I can just take a little spread here, money line, just get a little value on there.
Well, looking forward to keeping up with you and your bets all season long. You can find him at XFL Jim on Twitter and YouTube. Writes for the sportsgamblingpodcast.com. Jim, you've given us some great tips here, and I plan on letting you know how much money I lose this season.
I appreciate it. I let everybody know how much I win or lose. I'm not going to lie and say I win all the time.
All right.
Because I'm honest.
All right. You're an honest gambler. I like that. Thanks, Jim.
You bet.